Hello.
Hello.
Hi, David. Nice
How
to
are you
meet
doing?
you. I'm
Very nice
fine.
to meet you.
Thank you so much for accepting my invitation and for being here.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
How are you? How is everything going?
Pretty well, considering.
Great.
How about you?
All is good. All is good. Thank
Good.
you. So whenever you are ready, I would like to start. It's an
Sure.
incredible and fascinating project, so I would like to hear more about it.
Great. Well, I'm ready.
So please, can you tell us the idea behind ENCRYPGEN? How did you come up with creating it, its core ideology, and also what pushed you to incorporate the blockchain into the DNA?
Sure. So my background has been in philosophy and pretty recently in bioethics. I've been writing about genetics and ethics for quite some time. I wrote a book called Who Owns You about patenting genes. And my partner, my co-founder, my wife, Dr. Gonzalez, is a genomic scientist. So we've been collaborating for quite some time, and we have, we have interests that coincide a bit, and they really coincided in the product that we decided to create. So my interests had to do with, as I said, bioethics, and specifically with the notion of enabling people to own their data, to get some reward for their data. One of the cases I used to teach about in my bioethics courses was Henrietta. There was a movie recently and a book by Rebecca Skloot about her. And just to boil it down, her cells turned out to be extremely valuable for the pharmaceutical world and for science. And she died in poverty, and she died of cancer. So this is a sort of essential case in bioethics that points out the injustice that sometimes can result when people are not given a reward for their contributions to research that end up becoming quite valuable for others. My wife's interest is primarily in accessing more genomic data. So it turns out the world of genomic data is sort of dominated by the big testing companies. Those companies like Ancestry or 23andMe, who really dominate the testing market, they're not making most of their money through the sales of tests. They're making most of their money through the sale of your data once you've been tested. And most people don't have a problem with that, that 80% of the people who do those tests agree to that,
Okay.
but they don't get any reward. They don't get paid, and their recognition or their contribution to science isn't really recognized. So we wanted to solve that, and that's why we created the gene chain at ENCRYPGEN.
Excellent. Thank you, David. And do you have any information how many people so far have done DNA tests in the world, like in general? And besides that, it's mostly for research they do or for personal knowledge. They want to know the unknown somehow. Why people, for what other reasons can the DNA sequencing result can be used? And also, if you can incorporate here, give us more information about the gene chain.
Sure,
I saw your website, I read, and I have heard a lot of good news. So I really would like to hear more about it from you.
Okay. So there are about 30 million people in the world who've done commercial genetic tests. That's our best estimate right now. Those tests, so I should explain those tests. Those tests are not full genetic tests, okay? They don't give you a complete picture of your genetic makeup. What they do is they test for about 600,000 what are called SNPs, single nucleotide polymorphisms. So those are the interesting parts of the genome for the most part, where there are differences among us. You know, you and me, we're 99.5 or 6% similar. And that's true for people all around the world. But there are these SNPs that we've identified, that geneticists have identified as being these little changes, a single nucleotide polymorphism. So it's a little different. And that difference is what those tests really check for. Okay, so they're not doing a full genetic scan, but there's other parts of the genome that may be interesting. Nonetheless, we can get a pretty interesting picture of some things such as your ancestry by doing these tests. It's called genotyping. That's the type of test it is. And you know, the usefulness of those tests beyond ancestry is growing. So we're getting better insights as we study more about how we can predict certain diseases, detect certain diseases, propensities, traits, etc., as a result of just looking at those SNPs. But there's a lot more work to be done. So we need a lot more study, and that's really what the whole point of the ongoing project that we've created and other companies are creating as well as the studies that Ancestry and 23andMe and others like that are doing. So, there is this other problem that is that people are becoming increasingly reluctant to give up their data. They're not that interested necessarily in putting out possibly identifiable data without getting either paid for it or assurance that it's going to be safe or not prejudice them in some way. And there have been data breaches by some of the big companies as well. And if there's ever a big genomic data breach, that's going to compromise a lot of people's potentially identifying information and create all sorts of potentially ethical issues. So the idea that we're trying to encompass with our product is one of more privacy, more control, more security, and ownership of data, at least reward for data. And that, I think, is going to be the future for all of these big data aggregation tools in science and in commerce.
Okay, thank you. And I have here a question. Peter, the founder of Crypto News Lebanon, he's a neurobiologist as a background.
Sure.
What he said is, from a clinical point of view, a sick person or the ones who has the highest probabilities to get sick are the most valuable. What would be the reason for a control subject to run a test? And is it worth nowadays knowing how much a full sequencing costs? And how much in gene chain does this cost?
Okay, so yeah, those are great questions. I think that clinically, we're all going to benefit by understanding our own personal genomes. And that's really the view of a lot of doctors and physicians and people in genomics as well. As we understand our genome and how it interacts with our environment and medicines and the foods we take, we'll be able to better deliver personalized care, to lower the costs of our healthcare over time, and to realize immediate benefits from understanding our own genome. So control subjects, right, are valuable for yourself. You will benefit personally in your medical care, in your daily health, by having a good understanding of your genetic makeup. As we continue to develop a better picture of how genomics contributes to those things.
Okay.
Now, a whole genomic sequence is a whole different story. Right now, it's quite expensive still to run on, and there's 3 billion base pairs in your genome. So doing a full sequencing of the human genome is still expensive. It's several $100s. The price is supposed to come down. It's always supposed to come down, like the same way Moore's law improves the ability to compute. It's supposed to be inversely relational to that because it's a computing problem. So over time, as we get better and cheaper results from whole genome studies, it will make sense for individual people to do a whole genome scan and to be able to use that in their care. For now, a lot of that can be done with genotyping, but that's going to be the standard of care within the next 10 years. Now, for the gene chain, it doesn't cost you anything to upload the data. We've promised our customers they're always going to be able to upload their data for free. The price of storage for us is offset by our commissions on the sales of that data for science. And we expect that, if somebody's going to be uploading a whole genome sequence, that's going to be really in demand and more valuable for researchers to buy. So, we'll offset the cost of storage that way.
Great.
I hope that's responsive.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much. During your talk, I take some notes because It's a very insightful topic, and really, I would love to congratulate you and to your wife for such a great project. And I really wish that going forward, you will succeed more and more.
Yeah, we're pretty sure we will.
So the DNA results that you receive, how trustworthy are? Do you have a program or the way how you can track that the data, so that the people give, that the DNA results are not going to the wrong hands? And also the research institutions that they buy them, these DNA results, are they allowed to resell, or you kind of control it and you make sure that it goes as
so these are
signed? Because for sure it might be an agreement also when the data are
right. So what limits that is the user agreement when you engage with the gene chain. So you can't resell data that you downloaded just by contractual agreement. It's also not terribly, so that we have some technical means to detect if somebody's trying to resell a file that's already been sold. If you try to create a profile with my genomic file, the gene chain won't accept it. So it recognizes that kind of cheating.
Great.
So that's easy to catch, because no two files are going to be the same. And if it detects enough similarity among them, it's going to know that somebody's cheating and won't allow you to upload the second one. So that's one way we can control it. The other is the user agreement, which prevents resale of data that isn't yours. Part of your question, if you can repeat it, unless I've already responded.
DNA results that do not go to the wrong hands, that other people can misuse it, or I don't know.
So we do a couple of things to protect that. One is that we completely de-identify the file that's sold. So for now, you get a file that has no other identifying characteristics. And that is standard of care for that kind of data that is consistent with the regulations in both Europe and the United States for the use of genomic data. It's not enough for us. We are innovating in ways that we think will make it safer. For instance, we're creating a federated data solution so that the data doesn't actually change hands. And that's exciting. So we'll have more to say about that in the next couple of months. But we're constantly innovating to try to make it safer and better for protecting people's privacy and what we think is their right to profit from their data solely, instead of others being able to do it.
Absolutely. Thank you, David. And can you please tell us more about the DNA token?
Yeah, so
Utility?
we want to create an economy for genomics. And since we were the first really to have a blockchain-mediated marketplace for genomic data, it was a branding opportunity, and it was a sort of foundational opportunity to create this economy. So there is one currency of the gene chain, and that is the DNA token. Now, on our system, it operates as part of our multi-chain platform. So the DNA token that's exchanged for data exists in a closed system. It's not an ERC20 token on our system. It is a multi-chain token, and that foundation really gives us a nice kind of flexibility because we're not tied to a particular blockchain outside of the gene chain. But we did create an ERC20 token that matches one for one with the DNA token on our system so that people could cash out more easily. And we're also flexible about how that will evolve in the future. If in the future, Ethereum disappears, we're still not tied to that because we can create, we can use Bitcoin or any other crypto asset and then have people exchange it for that.
Great. Besides the DNA test results, do you ever think to include the organ donors?
This is an interesting problem because organs, of course, are tokens. They're physical things instead of data. Right now, our marketplace functions as a marketplace for data. Okay. Now, if you wanted to replicate a marketplace like that for biological tokens, items, and you could, but you have a whole range of other regulatory frameworks to worry about. Right now, it's really quite easy to trade genomic data, to use it for science, and you can do it ad infinitum. You know, there's no scarcity involved in that marketplace. But for physical goods, of course, there is, and that makes things a lot more complicated.
Okay. What's ENCRYPGEN now facing as a challenge? If you can
Our major challenge is user adoption. So as I said, there's about 30 million people out there who've done these tests. We would love to see all of them put their data on the gene chain and create an alternate marketplace that can compete with the monopolistic marketplace of Ancestry and 23andMe. But reaching them and telling them how to do that is the hard part. So, you know, this is a marketing issue, really. As I said, 80% of the people who've used those companies already philosophically support the idea of having their data used in science. So it should be an easy sell to tell them you could do it through us and also earn a couple of bucks.
Yeah.
And you know, that, however, and making that case to the existing marketplace of users who could use it is our task right now. But it requires some capital because that's a marketing task. And that's what we're doing now. We're trying to raise some capital, and we're trying to design outreach to reach those people to get them on board of the gene chain.
And when do you see ENCRYPGEN in the next 2 or 5 years, I can say, in the idea development and goal achievement?
Yeah, so our big development push right now is to protect people's data even further through our federated data solution. And as I said, we're going to be able to tell you more about that as our first prototype for that rolls out in the next couple of months. And you know, that will, I think, make us make the case for putting your data on the gene chain ironclad. You know, you've got no risk of that data at that point being resold. You know, we won't have to rely simply on contracts to do that, or on detecting copies of data on our system. So that's exciting, and that's going to be a big part of our next couple of years of development. And finding research partners. So, you know, one of the things we're trying to do is to encourage companies that are doing, or research centers that are doing studies, to adopt our point of view that people should own their data and profit from that data, and therefore, you know, work with us to help recruit people who've already done testing into their studies using the gene chain as a way to recompense. So that's I think a big part of our, you know, the other side of our marketing push, not just to find commercial users of genetic tests to adopt us, but to find research partners who are willing to, you know, take part in this new economy for genomic data, and embrace this notion of, you know, self-sovereign genomic data ownership. So those are the two big things we're concentrating on as our way of growing the user base, as our way of sort of you know, evangelizing the ideas behind the gene chain, and getting mass adoption.
Great, best of luck. And I was going through your website, and you have done amazing partnership. ENCRYPGEN is in partnership with so many organizations. And what caught my eye is that you have done collaboration with, or you are still collaborating with Nebula Genomics, and still, since February 2020, you are with Consensus Head.
Yeah, so because we don't sell testing, that leaves us able to partner with any company that's interested in doing testing, including Nebula, and we're excited by their products. As long as they agree with our basic philosophy that people should get paid for their data. So we're open to all of those collaborations. We'll do that with 23andMe tomorrow if they call us. So, you know, all of these companies we think are eventually going to come around to this notion. And it doesn't, you know, interfere, or it doesn't conflict with our business plan at all when anybody sells a test. Actually, it accentuates it. So we're excited by the growth of genomics as a marketplace.
Okay.
It's going to be a $40 billion marketplace within the next 4 years. There's tremendous excitement in the markets about genomics in general, and a great deal of value that's going to be realized in medicine from it. So we have this little solution that allows people to do great things that can plug and play into all sorts of other solutions right now.
And David, please, if you can say something to our audience, what's your message or advice?
That everybody in the world is an owner of something extremely important scientifically and valuable for the future of medicine, and that we can all take part in allowing that data that we all possess, that's our individual unique data. We can take part in that both for our own personal health through genomic testing and then for scientific breakthroughs. And the unrealized potential, the capital that we're basically sitting on in our own genomic makeup will improve life for everybody if we can access it, if we can make it accessible, and if we also realize some personal value for it. So not just for your healthcare, but get paid for its use. This is the wave of the future for all sorts of data. We've seen in the last couple of years how companies profit by the use of our data, but don't share those profits with us. And that, I think, has been a tremendous injustice. It has created distrust in social media and other tools. And it's something we can address. And a lot of companies like ours are trying to address it. And in our marketplace in genomics, we have the solution. And we're, other sorts of marketplaces, like, for instance, the Brave browser, have other solutions that we think are similar, for other types of data. And that's the future we should embrace. That's the future we're trying to realize. And that's the future that you as a consumer can choose to help succeed if you adopt it.
Excellent, great. Thank you, David. We have come to the
pleasure.
end of the program. If you also can say anything else that we did not cover about the ENCRYPGEN.
Sure. So actually, we're going to be launching a crowdfunding campaign. For years, people have been talking about, how can I own a part of ENCRYPGEN? What can I do to become, a supporter and an owner? In the next couple of weeks, we'll be starting to publicize a small initial crowdfunding campaign. So far, the ownership of the company has been very, very limited. It's just been my family, but we're expanding that. I've recently joined a group also called BT Block, which is a blockchain company that has a deep cybersecurity component. They're also now part owners of the company, and we're excited by that partnership and how it's going to help us grow, and how it'll also help us to improve our cybersecurity infrastructure. So we're just starting to really get out there and into the public. We've created this tool, and now we're ready to move towards the general commercial marketplace and professionalize everything we're doing.
Thank you, David. It has been an honor having you in my program, and an honor listening to you, to these creative and fascinating ideas. And I really look forward to having you again, maybe another time, and we discuss with other development and the achievements that ENCRYPGEN has done.
I'm happy to do it anytime. You just drop me an email.
Thank you so much, David. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All the best. Take care and keep in touch.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.